So one last time, we see our 8 criteria. Here we're looking at them as potential strengths and weaknesses of globalization. We'll look at just a couple of them. So some ways that globalization has enhanced freedom is by bringing us a wider range of choices of products and a wider range of choices of where to get products, maybe even new products, things we haven't seen. As we interact with people from different places, it encourages us to become more tolerant to different ways of doing things, and hopefully is spreading civil rights from or into countries that maybe not previously had them. So on the negative side, one possibility with globalization is it could actually increase collective action problems that maybe had previously been solved at the domestic level. Maybe you had some laws about um, labor regulations, either minimum wage, hours worked, those sorts of things. And that's because if you think about it, if each employee has to negotiate their own number of hours worked, there's a possibility that more powerful employers could just go find someone who will work under worse conditions than you. And so by having these laws in place, what we call labor standards in place, that means that everybody has at least that level of protection. So then when you open up to globalization to countries that may not have those same labor standards, maybe you're in this collective action problem again, where economic activity might move to a place that doesn't have the same restrictions. It's called race to the bottom. It's a concern that lots of people have about globalization, although I'll tell you the truth, the actual economic data doesn't actually seem to show it. In fact, what we actually see is that countries raise their labor standards as soon as they can afford them. However, this is certainly something that people are concerned about when it comes to globalization. And then kind of related, the range of feasible choices. A company might have more generous benefits and other working conditions for their employees when it's only facing domestic competition, but as it opens up and has to face tougher competition from abroad, they might not feel they can offer those same sorts of policies for their workers. So the good news about opening yourself up to globalization is that maybe it would make your business cycle a little less extreme, bring some stability. Um, if you are allowing more products to come in from abroad and they have a lower cost of production, maybe that helps keep inflation low at home. If you are going through a business cycle downturn, maybe your ability to export to other countries can make up for that and not make your businesses fall off quite so strongly as they would without the opportunity to export. And then there's always the possibility that if you're looking for places to invest, you don't just have to focus on the domestic market. You can look abroad, and that might keep you from over investing at home and having a big boom that will unfortunately lead to a big bust. On the negative side, how does globalization contribute to instability? One of the big ones is probably the downward pressure on wages, at least for some types of labor that are more directly competitive against the world. They might find that their wages aren't keeping up, and that leads to underconsumption. Loss of comparative advantage could happen as you open yourself up to globalization. You might find products that we used to make here are now shifting abroad. Capital can move in and out of countries very easily. In a country our size, we don't seem to feel it, but if you even look at the East Asian crisis that happened in the 1990s, it was largely, it's not only, but it was largely a factor of a huge amount of capital that flowed in, and then upon seeing a little signal that made them nervous, it flowed out so quickly, and that itself actually caused a financial crisis. And then a little more technical on the economic side, when you are looking at the impact of fiscal and monetary policies on a closed economy that is not involved with other ones, it's a lot more effective than when you open it up. Some of the impact essentially leaks out, and so the policies are less effective at impacting the domestic economy at home. As far as human development, there could be some really good developments as countries learn from each other, they learn new ideas, they learn to respect each other's cultures, they maybe adopt some of the better values and lifestyle. That could be all the good that could come from interacting in a economically interdependent way. But we could be spreading some of the more negative aspects of um, focusing on markets so that you are creating a culture of consumerism. You might be losing out on cultures, ethnic cultures in a place as they get exposed to the wider globalized world. Um, and so just a general erosion of the community could occur as a country tries to become part of this globalized world. Historically, democracy went with a market economy. And so, as the prosperity is rising and there's increasing demands for transparency and accountability in government, keeping it to be a developmental state, and then there's just this hope that this can spread into a global level. That could be how globalization and democracy work really well together. However, as you are opening yourself up to the globalized world, it can actually diminish the national sovereignty. Maybe you can't put certain policies in place because of how that would negatively impact your globalization, your relationships with others. You may not feel like you have control over um, maybe the way businesses are acting in your city because they're actually needing to respond to global pressures. The flow of capital can change the balance of power, and it might actually give capital owners greater bargaining power over even the government. And then there's a thing called transfer pricing, where businesses are making decisions within itself. It might produce in one place and essentially sell it to another place for another step of development, and they have to come up with prices of what this transfer would be. And all of that matters because the profits that are being generated in each country are taxable. So the corporation is making a decision that's best for itself, not necessarily best for the localities.